Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. My name's Oliver and I'm an addict. Got a lot going on today. A couple of episodes ago, I briefly started talking about the steps. And today, I think actually last time we got up to step 3. So I think it's a good point to continue on there. We're going to get started with the daily reflections from Alcoholics Anonymous. And coincidentally, it's actually another step 3 reading today. Today's reading is October 17, and it's called A Daily Tune-Up. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 85. How do I maintain my spiritual condition? For me, it's quite simple. On a daily basis, I ask my higher power to grant me the gift of sobriety for that day. I've talked to many alcoholics who have gone back to drinking, and I always ask them, did you pray for sobriety the day you took your first drink? Not one of them said yes. As I practice step 10 and try to keep my house in order on a daily basis, I have the knowledge that if I ask for a daily reprieve, it be granted. So they talk about step 10 there. And that is, we continue to take inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And that is something we will continue, and when I talk about the steps later on, we'll talk about more. But the main part of that reading was that we ask for a daily reprieve, and that's handing or making the decision to turn our will and our lives to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 3. So it's just a matter of having that conversation every day of, for me, admitting that Oliver's not running the show and making the conscious decision to just allow things to flow the way they would without my input. And that then frees me up and stops me from trying to control every situation and the outcome to make it suit my will and the way I want things to happen. I would encourage my listeners, everybody who's listening now, to just give that a go today. Just think, I'm not in control. And things are going to go the way they're going to go. I'll just let things happen and see what happens. Try not to bend it and shape it to the way I want it to go. When I do that, everything gets easier. I'm not constantly on the attack or trying to defend my stance and situation. There's a sense of curiosity of, well, I wonder what's going to happen next. And inevitably, good things happen and bad things happen, and that's okay. That's what we call in 12-step programs, you'll hear it a lot, life on life's terms. Stuff that I really struggle to deal with. So now we're going to talk about the next 3 steps I think we got time for today. So, step 4. We made a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Step 4 is something that a lot of people really are afraid of, and they worry about doing step 4. because you're looking at all the things you've done in your life. You know, that's what I did. The way I did step 4 was my sponsor encouraged me to write a list of all the people that I thought had, and it was just all the people that I didn't like, basically. All the people that I had something against. All the people I thought who had harmed me. All the people I thought had wronged me. All the people I had a resentment against. And once I actually sat down and started writing out names of people in my life, I realized there were quite a few. And as I was going about my day-to-day life in my early recovery, it actually, even before, I was never really truly aware of the amount of resentments that I held. It was just normal for me, and I never thought about the bigger picture of how much resentment I was carrying around. When I wrote it all down, that began the process of offloading it and removing it. So once I wrote down a list of all the people that I had something against from my entire life. So this was people who gave me a rough time in high school, teachers in school that I didn't like, people that I thought had wronged me, even just almost strangers, people that I'd had run-ins in the street and thought about all those years later and thought, oh, I hate that person. There were ex-relationships. There were resentments against law enforcement, resentments against health professionals, family members, peers in my career that I thought were doing better than me and I was resentful at because how dare they? People that I thought were smug. All these things. And once I wrote them all down, I then had to write how that affected me. So I'll give you one example. Someone in high school who used to give me a really hard time. You know, someone who bullied me and had a lasting effect on my life. You know, somebody who physically, attacked me on a couple of occasions, and I was very raw about that. So they affected me by bullying me and making me feel less than, making me feel unsafe, making me feel worried. And then once I wrote that down, I then wrote what was my part in it. And that was a really difficult stage because I felt that I was truly the victim. And in this case, you know, I felt like I was the victim, and I felt like I was owed, you know, an apology, and I'd been harmed, and really there was nothing else to say. That was it. And I didn't quite understand what my sponsor was trying to get me to dig up and realize. So the way the step 4 worked for me was, once I'd written them all out, I then looked backwards. So at the realization that my part in that bullying episode was that I expected and controlled the situation and believed that I should have been respected and should have been safe, and that how dare somebody do something that I don't like. That was the first thing. So because I'm controlling, that was where it came down to. I was trying to control the situation. because I was controlling, I was then hurt because I got bullied. And finally, the first column becomes the last column. The bully actually had nothing to do with it. I saw my part in the whole situation. So my control, my defect, my character defect was causing me unnecessary suffering. What I needed to do there after that is realize that I can't control the way other people behave, and that sure, some people will make me feel unsafe, some people will bully me, some people will do that. There are a lot of people in the world and a lot of people we cross paths with, and not all of them are nice. And that sheer act of carrying around that resentment for all those years actually caused me great harm. And ultimately, I was harming myself. It's not always that simple. You know, our relationships and interactions are very difficult, and some things that genuinely do happen to us are very harmful, and it's a very slow process of just becoming aware and making change. But for me, when I looked through my step 4, I saw all my defects were control, all the way down the list. And it comes from a place of fear for me, that I was afraid of being rejected and afraid of being judged. And this bully was judging me and rejecting me and saying that I don't like you. And that really struck me to my core, that I wanted to be included and I wanted to be loved. And, you know, when that didn't happen to me, that's when I actually used, because I was seeking to nullify those horrible feelings of abandonment and rejection. And now I was able to begin the next step. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. How amazing. So that's a very brief introduction to the 4th step. And at the beginning of this episode, I actually thought, we'll talk about 3 steps today. Not going to happen. You know, it's quite an in-depth discussion. We'll talk more about it after this break.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. Like what you hear? Then visit us at www.rehab.melbourne for more shows.
That's right. So now we're going to talk about actually another story about that particular bully that I was talking about, and how, you know, the reading today was on the 3rd step, and that we make the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So how does this all work? Well, I've given you an insight into something that was very personal for me, you know, in regards to my 4th step and an interaction with someone in my life. Fast forward maybe a year later or so, you know, I'd completed the steps. My 10-year high school reunion. I thought I'd just go because I was kind of curious to see what had happened to my peers from high school. You know, I didn't have a particularly great time in high school. It was the formative years of my active addiction, and it's a painful time. Adolescence is often a painful time for people, but I don't know, I'll just talk from my perspective. So we go, and there's my bully. There's this kid that, you know, pushed me almost into a pond at school. The person who verbally abused me on multiple occasions, and just made me feel really bad and afraid and not good. And as I was sort of making my way through the crowd of my year level, saying hello to people and, what have you been up to, all that sort of small talky stuff, he singles me out and he comes over and was a little bit apprehensive of what was going to be said, but I found that because I'd actually done some serious work on, this particular resentment that I had and seen my part in it, I felt that my just all that tension and pain that I'd been carrying had melted away, and it became really apparent when this guy was standing in front of me. And we had a conversation of, oh, what have you been up to? This and that. And it became apparent that, his life had just continued on and he'd grown up. And that person that he was just an adolescent trying to find his way in the world, and I came in the firing line for a time. And he actually apologized to me. He said, I treated you really badly over the years and I'm sorry. And at that point I knew that I could forgive him. And I said, look, mate, I gave you back almost as much as what I got. And I did, Wasn't necessarily that I was asking for it, but I used to kind of try and defend myself and throw back, shots at him when he was bullying me. And it was just a moment of, I guess for me, the steps, doing each step. It felt like, I've used this analogy before, that I was carrying around a backpack full of bricks, and the more work I did, the more bricks were eventually, removed from that backpack, and this was just another one. So for the people who are, in early recovery and wondering what to do, consider doing this, consider making that first step towards this, it's just a program of personal growth. It's not joining a religious cult or anything like that. I was willing at the beginning when I surrendered, when I decided to go to treatment. I decided that I was going to do something different this time and see what I could do and what was available to me. And rehab was the first step in that chain of events that led me to where I am now. And attending a meeting was the next one, and it all flowed from there. So I encourage everybody to do that, to try it at least. If you don't like that first meeting, go to another meeting, try a different fellowship, talk to people. And I'm going to follow this up. We're going to talk about step 5 at my next available opportunity in one of these subsequent episodes. It's a great journey, and I'm looking forward to sharing that transformation that I had personally with all of you, and hopefully maybe you can begin that journey yourselves at some stage when you're ready. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.